A millionaire pretends to be broke to test his poor fiancée, but what she did, no one expected. Before we start the story, tell us in the comments, what city are you watching from? Enjoy the story, everyone. Lucas was driving down the dirt road that led to the Oliveira family's farm. At 35, he had built a business empire in Chicago that few could match. His tech company, Summit Innovations, was worth billions, but no amount of money could fill the emptiness he had felt in his heart for years. That was until he met Gabriella. 6 months ago, he had gone to the small town to buy land and expand his business. That's when he saw her for the first time, selling homemade pies at the local market. Gabriella Oliveira, with her warm smile and eyes that lit up when she talked about her dream of becoming a chef. She was studying culinary arts, working hard and paying for college with determination. Lucas smiled as he remembered pretending to be just a visitor interested in buying a pie. They talked for hours that day. He came back the next day and the next, until he finally asked her out to dinner. "Do you really think she loves you for who you are?" The voice of his lawyer and best friend Marcos echoed in his mind. "Or for what you have?" That question had haunted him for weeks. His ex-fiancée, Vanessa, had broken his heart years earlier when he found out she was only with him for his money. Since then, Lucas had built walls around his heart, unable to trust any woman. But Gabriella seemed different. Simple, honest, hard-working. She lived on the farm with her widowed father, Miguel, and her 2 older sisters, Ana and Clara. A close-knit family with strong values. But was it all just a facade? Lucas parked far from the farm, changed his expensive suit for simple clothes he kept in the trunk, and walked the rest of the way. His mind was made up. It was risky, maybe even cruel, but he had to know the truth. When he arrived, he saw Gabriella watering the garden. His heart sped up. She looked beautiful without even trying, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her hands covered in soil. "Lucas!" Gabriella dropped the watering can and ran to hug him. "I didn't expect you today. What a wonderful surprise!" He hugged her tightly, breathing in the scent of her hair. Was he about to lose all of this? "Gabi, we need to talk," he said, his voice shaky. Her smile vanished immediately. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Lucas took a deep breath, feeling like the worst man in the world for what he was about to do. "I lost everything, Gabi." "What do you mean?" "My company, a business partner. He stole money, forged my signature on some documents. By the time I found out, it was too late." Lucas let a few tears fall, surprised by how convincing he sounded. "I'm ruined. Everything I built, it's all gone." Gabriella stared at him for a moment, wide-eyed. Lucas braced himself for the shock, the disappointment, the distance. But what came next took him completely by surprise. "Oh, Lucas," she hugged him tightly. "That's awful, but it's going to be okay, I promise." She held his face in her hands. "We'll get through this together." "Together?" The word came out as a whisper of disbelief. "Of course. Do you think I would leave you at a time like this?" She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Come on, let's go inside. I'll call Dad and my sisters. You'll stay here with us while you recover." "Stay here? But Gabi, I can't pay for anything. I can't contribute." "Who said anything about paying?" She took his hand and led him toward the simple but cozy house. "You're family now, Lucas, and family takes care of each other." Lucas felt a lump in his throat as he stepped inside the house. Gabriella called her father and sisters, quickly explaining the situation. What happened next shocked him even more. Miguel, a man of few words and rough hands from a life of hard work, placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "My home is your home, son. No one goes without here." Ana, the eldest, was already preparing the guest room. "I'll put on fresh sheets. After a hot shower and a good meal, you'll feel better." Clara, the middle sister, started making tea. "What matters is your health and your family, Lucas. Money comes and goes." Lucas sat at the kitchen table, watching this humble family spring into action to help him, a man they'd only known for 6 months. They didn't ask for details about how much he had lost. They didn't question if he'd been careless. They just offered help, without conditions. "Don't worry," Gabriella whispered, sitting beside him and holding his hand. "You once told me you started from nothing and built your business. You can do it again, and this time you won't be alone." Lucas felt a tightness in his chest. His plan to test Gabriella was revealing something he hadn't expected, not just about her, but about himself. In all his years of wealth and power, he had never experienced anything like this. Real love, with no conditions or expectations. As the family moved around him, getting ready to support him in his time of need, Lucas realized that maybe he was the one being tested after all. The next morning, Lucas woke up to the sound of roosters crowing. For a moment, he felt disoriented in the simple room where he had slept. Clean sheets with a hint of lavender, a window that opened to the countryside, and a wooden chair with his clothes folded neatly. He smiled, recognizing Gabriella's touch. "You're awake." Her sweet voice came with a soft knock on the door. "Yes, come in." Gabriella walked in carrying a tray with coffee, homemade bread, and jam. She wore a floral apron over a simple dress, and her face showed the look of someone who hadn't slept much, but was trying not to let it show. "I brought your breakfast. I thought you might need some more rest, but Dad's been out in the fields since sunrise." Lucas sat up in bed. "You didn't have to go through the trouble, Gabby." "It's no trouble." She placed the tray on the nightstand. "How are you feeling today?" "Still processing everything," he replied, feeling a stab of guilt over the lie he was living. Gabriella sat on the edge of the bed and held his hand. "I've been thinking all night," she began, her eyes showing a determined spark. "This could be a chance, you know? Maybe a new beginning, something different." "What do you mean?" "Dad always needs more help here on the farm. Anna teaches at the town school and Clara works at the health clinic. I split my time between college and helping with the farm work. It would be great to have another pair of hands." Lucas swallowed hard. Farm work? He barely knew how to turn on a washing machine. As if she could read his thoughts, Gabriella smiled. "I know you've never done anything like this before, but Dad's a great teacher. And while you're learning, you can stay here with us. No pressure." The idea of working on a farm was terrifying to Lucas, but saying no would be strange for someone supposedly out of options. "I think it's a great idea," he managed to say, trying to sound thankful instead of panicked. After breakfast, Lucas met Miguel out in the field. The 60-year-old man, with sun-worn skin and strong arms, looked him over from head to toe. "Gabriella told me you're going to help us," he said straight to the point. "Ever worked the land before?" "Actually, no, sir." Miguel nodded, not looking surprised. "We all start without knowing. Come on, I'll show you the basics." The next few hours were a humbling experience for Lucas. Hands used to signing contracts were now holding shovels and hoes. His Italian shoes had been replaced with rubber boots borrowed from Miguel. The sun beat down on his skin, which rarely saw daylight outside of luxury resorts. By lunchtime, his muscles were screaming. He walked back to the house, staggering next to Miguel, who didn't seem tired at all. Clara, the middle sister who worked as a nurse assistant, smiled as he walked in. "The first time is always the hardest," she said, handing him a damp towel to wipe his face. "Take a quick shower while I finish lunch." In the shower, Lucas looked at the blisters already forming on his hands. As the CEO of a billion-dollar company, he faced challenges every day, but nothing like the physical labor of that morning. A new kind of respect was growing in him for Miguel and his family. During lunch, Anna, the oldest sister who taught at the local school, brought out some men's clothes. "They belong to my ex-husband," she explained without embarrassment. "I think they'll fit you. Better than ruining your own working out in the field." "Thank you," Lucas replied, genuinely grateful. "You're all doing so much for me." "It's the least we can do," Anna said with a gentle smile. "Gabriella's never brought anyone here before. If she chose you, it's because you're someone special." 2 weeks went by quickly. Lucas got used to life on the farm, waking up at sunrise and falling into bed exhausted every night. His once soft hands now proudly showed calluses. To his own surprise, he was starting to enjoy the simple life. One Sunday afternoon, while everyone was resting after lunch, Gabriella asked him to go for a walk. "I want to show you a special place," she said, taking his hand. They walked to a small lake at the back of the property. The sunset reflected on the calm water, creating a breathtaking scene. "I come here when I need to think," she explained, sitting on the grass. "It's my favorite place in the world." Lucas sat beside her, feeling a peace he had never known in his luxury penthouses in Chicago. "Gabi." "Wait," she interrupted, taking his hands. "There's something I need to tell you first." Her expression was serious, determined. These past few weeks, seeing you here adjusting to our life, working hard without complaining, it just confirmed what I already knew. Lucas felt his heart race. Had she figured out his secret? Lucas, I loved you when you had money and success, and I love you now without any of that. She took a deep breath. Actually, I think I love you even more now, seeing who you really are when everything else is stripped away. Lucas felt the words catch in his throat. Guilt was eating him alive. What I'm trying to say is, Gabriella continued, her cheeks turning red. I know it might sound crazy, but will you marry me? Lucas was in shock. Out of all the possibilities, he never expected that. You're asking me to marry you? I am, she smiled, a bit nervous. I know it's not traditional, and I don't have a ring to give you, but I don't want to wait. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, Lucas, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. In that moment, Lucas almost confessed everything. He nearly told her about his cruel test, about the fortune he still had, about the luxurious life he could give her. But looking into Gabriella's honest eyes, he knew he had to see the test through to the end. Yes, he said, tears in his eyes. Yes, I want to marry you. A week later, they got married in the town's small church. The ceremony was simple, with just a few people, only Gabriella's family and a few close neighbors. Gabriella wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered by Anna and Clara in the days before. Lucas wore a suit borrowed from the priest, since the only one he owned was too expensive to sell, according to the story he had told. During the vows, when he promised to love and honor Gabriella in wealth and in poverty, the weight of those words hit him harder than ever before. At the small reception that followed, held in the backyard of the farm decorated with string lights and wildflowers, Miguel walked up to Lucas with 2 glasses of homemade wine. My Gabriella has always been special, he said, handing one glass to Lucas. Stubborn, determined, with a heart bigger than the world. Yes, she's amazing, Lucas agreed, watching his new wife dance with her sisters. Take good care of her, Miguel went on, his eyes intense. Whatever the future holds for you two, remember that honesty is the foundation of any marriage. Lucas felt like Miguel could see right through him, like he knew the truth. He simply nodded, unable to find any words. That night, as Gabriella slept in his arms in the small room they now shared, Lucas made a decision. He would continue with his plan, but take it in a new direction. He would convince Gabriella to move to Chicago, where he would slowly tell her the truth. She deserved more than that simple life. She deserved everything he could offer, and more. A month after the wedding, Lucas started planting the idea of moving to Chicago. They were lying in bed after a long day of work on the farm when he brought it up. Gabby, have you ever thought about what it would be like to live in a big city? She turned to him, curious. Why do you ask? I've been thinking. You're in your last year of culinary school. In Chicago, there are so many more opportunities for talented chefs like you. Gabriella became thoughtful, playing with a loose thread on the blanket. I don't know, Lucas. My family's here. Dad depends on our help with the farm. I understand, he said, holding her. It's just an idea. But think about it. We could start fresh. I'd look for a job, you'd finish school, and maybe even open your own place one day. In the days that followed, Lucas kept mentioning Chicago casually. He talked about the parks, the restaurants, the opportunities. Little by little, he noticed Gabriella starting to warm up to the idea. One night, during a family dinner, she surprised everyone. We're thinking about moving to Chicago, Gabriella announced, holding Lucas's hand. Silence fell over the table. Miguel froze with his fork in midair, staring at his daughter. That's a big decision, he finally said. Are you sure? Yes, Dad. I want to finish school, and Lucas thinks we could start a new life there. Anna, always the practical one, was the first to speak up. Do you have enough savings to get started? Big cities are expensive. Lucas felt his stomach drop. In his story, he was a man with nothing. I have some contacts in Chicago, he said quickly. Old connections from work who might help me find a job. It won't be anything fancy, but it'll be enough to get us going. And I plan to sell cakes and pies while I finish school, Gabriella added, with the same passion Lucas had always admired in her. Just like I do here at the market, only there. Clara, always the most emotional and generous, went to her room, took all her savings and handed them to Lucas and Gabriella. Then Anna and Miguel also gave them all the money they had saved. "It's not much, but it should cover a few months of rent," Miguel said. Lucas was speechless. He didn't know what to say, but to keep up the act, he couldn't turn it down. "I promise I'll pay you all back one day. Thank you so much for what you're doing," Lucas said with tears in his eyes. Already crying, Clara said, "We're going to miss you so much." "We'll miss you too," Gabriela said, holding back her tears. "But it's not like we're never coming back. It's just a new chapter." Miguel stayed quiet, watching the couple. After a long pause, he looked directly at Lucas and spoke. "Take care of her in the big city. It's a different world than what she's used to." "With my life, Mr. Miguel," Lucas promised, feeling the weight of the lie on his shoulders. 2 weeks later, with the old family truck loaded with their few belongings, Gabriela and Lucas said goodbye to the farm. It was a morning filled with tears and promises to visit often. Miguel held his daughter tightly for a long time, whispering advice in her ear. When he turned to Lucas, his look was intense. "Remember what we talked about on your wedding day," he said softly, squeezing his son-in-law's shoulder. Lucas just nodded, unable to meet his father-in-law's gaze. The trip to Chicago was long. Gabriela felt both excited about their new life and sad to leave her family behind. Lucas, on the other hand, was dealing with an inner conflict. He was taking his wife to a city where he was known as a powerful businessman. How would he keep up the lie? Sticking to his plan, he rented a small apartment in a modest neighborhood, far from the financial district where his company was located. The place was tiny, with a combined living room and kitchen, 1 bedroom, and 1 bathroom. Nothing like the luxury penthouses he was used to. But it was clean and cozy. "It's perfect," Gabriela said as she stepped in, spinning in the middle of the room. "Our first home together." Lucas smiled, caught up in her happiness. For someone used to mansions and luxury apartments, the place should have felt small and sad. But through Gabriela's eyes, it looked like a palace. The next day, Lucas told her he was going out to look for a job. He put on his simplest clothes and left, promising to be back before dinner. As soon as he turned the corner, he took a cab to a department store, where he kept clothes in a private locker for VIP clients. He changed quickly, becoming the CEO he really was. As the cab took him to the skyscraper where Summit Innovation's headquarters were located, he rehearsed what he would say about his absence. Lucas, thank God. His secretary Patricia almost spilled her coffee when she saw him step out of the elevator. "Where have you been? We were all so worried." "I needed to take some time, Patricia," he answered naturally. "Personal matters, but I'm back." "Any emergencies?" "Well, yes, several actually. The board is furious about your absence. 3 investors threatened to pull out, and the tech global execs are pushing for a response on the merger deal." Lucas smiled. It was time to get back to work. Over the following weeks, he settled into a routine. He would leave home dressed modestly, change into his business attire on the way to work, and reverse the process on the way back. He told Gabriela he had found a job as an administrative assistant at a mid-sized company. "The pay's not great," he explained, handing her what seemed like a reasonable amount for that kind of job. "But it's a start." Gabriela, meanwhile, had contacted the local university and managed to transfer her enrollment to finish her culinary arts degree. She also started baking cakes in their small apartment and selling them to nearby coffee shops. "We're going to make it, Lucas," she would say every night as they counted the money they'd earned that day. "Step by step, we're building our future." He agreed, even though he knew he could give her a life of luxury right away. But there was something special about seeing Gabriela fight for her dreams, full of confidence and determination. Let's play a little game for those who only read the comments. Type pizza in the comments. Only those who read this far will get it. Now let's keep going with the story. One day, coming home later than usual from the office, Lucas walked into the apartment smelling of chocolate and vanilla. Gabriela was in their tiny kitchen, covered in flour, surrounded by dozens of colorful cupcakes. "What's all this?" he asked, amazed. "I got my first big client," she exclaimed, jumping up to hug him. "A neighborhood bookstore is hosting a children's event this weekend and ordered 50 cupcakes." Lucas hugged her tightly, genuinely proud. "That's amazing, Gabby." "And there's more," she went on, excited. The bookstore owner loved my cakes and said she might recommend me for other events. Who knows, if things keep growing like this, I might even open my own bakery one day. Gabriella's excitement was contagious. That night, they celebrated with cheap wine and laughter, making plans for the future like any young couple just starting out. But the next day, Lucas received troubling news at the company. Jeffrey Winters, one of the biggest investors in the tech industry, was attempting a hostile takeover of Summit Innovations. Rumors were that he planned to dismantle the company and sell it off in pieces, putting hundreds of jobs at risk. "We need to act fast," said Marcos, his lawyer and friend, during an emergency meeting. "Winters has already bought 15% of the shares and is pressuring other shareholders to sell." Lucas ran a hand over his face, tense. "Get our legal team moving. I want every possible option to stop this takeover." "There's one more thing," Marcos hesitated. "Winters is using your recent absence as an argument. He's saying you've lost control of the company and that the investors would be better off with him in charge." The news hit Lucas like a punch. His little game of pretending to be poor was now threatening not just his relationship with Gabriella, but the company he had built from the ground up and the jobs of thousands of people. "That's not going to happen," he said firmly. "Summit is my life. I'm not going to let anyone tear it apart." That night, he returned to the small apartment with a heavy mind. He found Gabriella asleep on the couch, surrounded by recipes and notes for her cake business. The contrast between their two worlds had never felt so clear. The crisis at the company meant he needed to be more present than ever at Summit, which made it harder and harder to keep up his act with Gabriella. How much longer could he live this double life before everything came crashing down? Lucas now lived in two completely different worlds. In the morning, he kissed Gabriella in their little apartment, put on simple clothes, and left the house as the administrative assistant she believed him to be. But once he turned the corner, he transformed back into the powerful CEO of Summit Innovations. His routine was a carefully choreographed dance. He carried two phones, an inexpensive one for Gabriella to call him, and a top-of-the-line one for business matters. He arrived home at the same time every day, always with made-up stories about coworkers who didn't exist and a pretend boss who was demanding but fair. "How was your day?" Gabriella asked every evening as they cooked dinner together in the small kitchen. "The usual," he would say with a shrug. "Lots of emails, a few meetings, and yours?" Gabriella's eyes always lit up when she talked about her culinary school and her growing cake business. In just 2 months in the city, she had already built up regular clients, mostly local cafes and small events. "Professor Martinez said my cherry and almond cake was the best in the class today," she told him one night, bouncing with excitement. "He said I have blessed hands for baking." Lucas smiled, genuinely proud. There was something special about seeing Gabriella find her own success, unaware of the wealth he could have offered her. Meanwhile, at Summit Innovations, the fight against the hostile takeover was draining his energy. Jeffrey Winters was relentless, using more aggressive tactics by the day to gain control. He convinced 3 more shareholders to sell, Marcos reported in a tense meeting. "He's only 7% away from majority control." Lucas slammed the table in frustration. "Call a press conference for tomorrow. I'm going to announce our new product line ahead of schedule. That should push up our stock value and make the takeover harder." The secretary took notes quickly. "Will 10 a.m. work?" "Perfect," Lucas confirmed, going over his mental calendar. Gabriella would be in class at that time, so there would be no risk. Living a double life was becoming more and more difficult. There were days when he almost slipped, nearly mentioned something about the company to Gabriella, or almost called Marcos in front of her. More and more, he felt the weight of the lie he had built. One afternoon, Gabriella came home glowing. "I have an amazing idea," she exclaimed, tossing her backpack on the couch. "I'm working on a line of gourmet cakes for school, creative combinations like lavender with Sicilian lemon and spicy chocolate with cardamom." "That looks delicious," Lucas said, genuinely interested. "My professor says I have a knack for creativity." She stepped closer, holding his hands. "So I thought, what if I started selling these special cakes to companies, for corporate events, receptions, that sort of thing?" Lucas felt his heart skip a beat. "Companies? I don't know, Gabby. Big companies usually go with professional catering services. But that's exactly the point. She was so excited she didn't notice his hesitation. I can start with smaller companies, build up a portfolio, and I've got a secret family recipe for a cinnamon cake no one can resist. Seeing how enthusiastic she was, Lucas couldn't bring himself to discourage her. It's a great idea, he finally said. Just be patient. These things take time. Of course, Rome wasn't built in a day. She smiled. I'll start tomorrow, handing out samples at some of the office buildings nearby. Lucas swallowed hard, imagining Gabriella showing up unannounced at his company with cake samples. The risk was growing by the day. The following week, while Lucas sat through yet another tense meeting about the hostile takeover attempt, Gabriella faced her own challenges at the university. The University of Chicago campus was a far cry from the small-town college she had come from. Most of the culinary students came from wealthy families, wore designer clothes, and talked about internships at Michelin-starred restaurants around the world. Gabriella, with her modest clothing and small-town demeanor, quickly became an easy target for a particular group of girls. "Look who's here, the farm princess," Vanessa Miller remarked as Gabriella walked into the kitchen lab. Vanessa was the daughter of a well-known food critic. "Are we learning to make country pudding today?" Her friends, Rebecca and Stephanie, laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Gabriella took a deep breath and ignored them, just like she always did. She focused on preparing her dish of the day, a refined version of a traditional Brazilian dessert. "Don't let them get to you," whispered Kim, a Korean classmate who had become her friend. "They're just spoiled girls who've never had to earn anything in life." Gabriella gave her a grateful smile. "Don't worry. I grew up with 2 older sisters. I know how to handle teasing." But things got worse when the professor announced the groups for the final project. "Miller, Gabriella Oliveira, Rebecca Chen, and Stephanie Johnson. You'll be doing the spring menu." Vanessa's face twisted in dismay. "Professor, can I switch groups? I'm allergic to people who smell like cow manure." The room fell silent. The professor looked at Vanessa sternly. "Miss Miller, that comment is completely inappropriate. You'll work with your assigned group or receive a 0 on the project." Vanessa rolled her eyes but didn't argue further. After class, Gabriella went to the bathroom to pull herself together. Vanessa's words had hurt more than she wanted to admit. Looking in the mirror, she thought of her father, her sisters, and the farm she loved so much. "Never be ashamed of your roots," her father always said. "They're what make you strong." With renewed determination, Gabriella decided to move forward with her plan to sell cakes to companies. That afternoon, she prepared several samples of her best cakes: cinnamon apple, chocolate orange, and coconut lime. The next day, she dressed in her best clothes, a navy blue skirt and a white blouse Anna had given her as a gift, and headed to the business district with her sample box. What Gabriella didn't know was that on that same day, Lucas was holding a press conference in the lobby of his building, announcing a new technology he hoped would revolutionize the market and save his company from being taken over. Gabriella started with the smaller buildings, where she got mixed responses. Some receptionists happily tried her cakes and asked for business cards. Others barely looked at her before turning her away. By late afternoon, tired but still hopeful, she reached a tall glass skyscraper. "Summit Innovations," the elegant letters at the entrance read. "Last try of the day," she murmured to herself, straightening her hair before stepping inside. In the luxurious lobby, she approached the front desk. "Good afternoon. My name is Gabriella Oliveira. I'm a culinary student, and I'm starting a small bakery service for corporate events. I brought some samples, if you'd like to try them." The receptionist, a well-dressed woman in her 50s, smiled politely. "How thoughtful of you. I love cake." She glanced around as if checking that no one was watching. "May I try one?" "Of course." Gabriella opened the box, revealing the neatly decorated mini samples. While the receptionist tasted the cinnamon cake and let out little sounds of delight, Gabriella stood there in awe, taking in the impressive lobby and its elegant design. That's when her eyes caught something, or rather, someone, familiar. Crossing the lobby toward the private elevators was Lucas. Her Lucas. But not the Lucas she knew. the one who wore simple clothes and always looked tired from his job as an assistant. This Lucas wore a perfectly tailored suit, walked with the confidence of someone who owned the place, and was chatting with two men in equally expensive suits. "Mr. Bennett," one of the men called out. "Great presentation today. The press is loving the announcement." "Thanks, Richard," Lucas, her husband, replied with a confident smile. "Tell the marketing department to ramp up the campaign. I want everyone talking about this technology by the end of the week." Gabriella froze. The sample box slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. The cakes scattered across the polished marble floor. The receptionist looked over, alarmed. "Are you all right, dear?" But Gabriella couldn't speak. She couldn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on Lucas, her husband, the man she thought was a low-paid administrative assistant, barely able to afford their tiny apartment, being treated like the owner of one of the largest tech companies in the country. Before Lucas could see her, Gabriella snapped out of it, just enough to crouch down, gather the scattered cakes, and mumble an apology to the confused receptionist. With shaky legs and a heart pounding in her chest, she stumbled out of the building. Pieces started to come together in her mind. The long hours at work, the phone calls he always took in private, the way he spoke about business when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Her husband, the man who had promised to love and respect her, had been living a lie. And she, the small-town girl who believed she had found true love, was just part of that lie. With tears blurring her vision, Gabriella took the bus back to their apartment, her dreams of selling cakes to companies forgotten for the moment under the weight of betrayal. The ride home felt like the longest of her life. Sitting on the bus with the squished cake box on her lap, she tried to process what she had just seen. Lucas, her husband, wasn't a struggling assistant trying to rebuild his life. He was, apparently, the owner of one of Chicago's biggest tech firms. When she reached the small apartment, Gabriella stood at the door for a few minutes, too overwhelmed to go in. Everything now seemed like part of a setup, a show, a stage designed to fool her. Finally, she took a deep breath, turned the key, and stepped inside. She looked around with new eyes, the worn-out couch, the coffee table with the broken leg, the faded curtains. Lucas, a wealthy man, had chosen to live here, with her. Why? Her phone rang, making her jump. It was Lucas. "Hey, Gabby, I'm gonna have to stay late at work tonight. Don't wait up for dinner, okay?" "All right," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Good luck with work." "You okay? Your voice sounds off." "I'm fine, just tired. School was tough today." The lies came so easily now, she noticed with sadness. "Okay, love you." Gabriella hung up without replying. Those words, "love you," felt empty now. What did they mean coming from someone living a complete lie? She spent the next few hours in a daze, sitting on the couch, replaying every moment from the past few months. Lucas's supposed financial ruin, the rushed wedding, the move to Chicago, the modest apartment, the assistant job. All lies. Why would a rich and powerful man pretend to lose everything? Why marry her under false pretenses? Why live in this cramped apartment when he could have been in a mansion? The answer hit her like a punch to the gut. He was testing her, trying to see if she loved him for who he was or for his money. And she, a hopeless romantic, had fallen right into the trap. Tears of anger and humiliation streamed down her face as she heard the key in the door. It was almost midnight, and Lucas was finally home from work. "Gabi?" he called out as he walked in, surprised to see her awake. "I thought you'd be asleep by now." She stayed silent, just looking at him. Lucas looked tired, his hair slightly messy, dark circles under his eyes, always acting. "What's wrong?" he asked, walking closer. "Have you been crying?" "Who are you, Lucas?" The question came out in a whisper. "What do you mean? Who are you, really?" She stood up, staring at him. "Because clearly, you're not who you said you were." His face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about, Gabby. I'm tired. Can we talk tomorrow?" "I went downtown today," she continued, ignoring his attempt to escape. "Trying to sell my cakes to businesses, remember? That idea you thought might not work." Lucas swallowed hard, starting to understand. "Funny how I ended up at Summit Innovations. Huge glass skyscraper. And guess who I saw there?" "Gabby, I can explain." "I saw you, Lucas," she shouted, all the anger she'd been holding back exploding at once. "Wearing an expensive suit, giving orders, people calling you boss. Lucas closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the blow. "The show's over," she went on, trembling with anger. "I want the truth, now." He walked slowly to the couch and sat down, running his hands over his face. "You're right," he finally began. "I didn't lose everything. In fact, I didn't lose anything. So it was all a lie, from the very beginning?" "It's not all of it," he argued, looking at her with pleading eyes. "My feelings for you are real, Gabby. They always have been." She laughed, a bitter sound. "Your feelings? How can I believe anything you say now?" "I own Summit Innovations," he continued, ignoring the question. "It's worth billions. I have apartments, houses, luxury cars, the whole life I pretended to have lost." "Why?" Her question was simple but filled with pain. "Why would you do this to me?" Lucas stood and began pacing the room, clearly upset. "You don't understand what it's like, Gabby. Growing up with money, always surrounded by people who only want what you have, not who you are. I've dated plenty of women before, and they were all after my wealth, not me." He stopped and looked at her intently. "Years ago, before I met you, I was engaged. Vanessa, beautiful, smart, from a good family." His voice trembled slightly. "I truly loved her and thought she felt the same." "What happened?" Gabriella asked, despite herself. "A week before the wedding, I went to surprise her. I overheard her on the phone with her lover." The bitterness in his voice was clear. She was laughing, saying how easy it would be to marry me, take half my fortune in the divorce, and then run off with him. Gabriella sat down again, stunned by the revelation. "After that, I stopped trusting anyone. I built walls around me, until I met you." A small, sad smile formed on his face. "You were different from all the others. Simple, genuine, hard-working. But the doubt was always there. So you decided to test me?" "Yes," he admitted, lowering his head. "When we fell in love, I couldn't believe someone like you could truly love someone like me without caring about my money. I needed to be sure." "And you got your answer, didn't you?" She stood up, furious. "When I gave up everything to be with you, when my family welcomed you, when I proposed, thinking we were just two ordinary people starting over." Tears were now streaming freely down Gabriella's face. "Yes, I got my answer," he whispered, tears in his own eyes. "And it was more than I ever dreamed of. You showed me a kind of love I didn't know existed, Gabby. And in return, you lied to me. About everything. Not about loving you," he insisted, stepping closer to her. "Never about that." Gabriella stepped back, as if his touch would burn her. "You don't know what love is, Lucas. Love is trust. It's honesty. It's respect." She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "What you did wasn't love. It was manipulation." "Please, Gabby," he begged, trying to take her hands. "I can fix this. We can start over for real now. No more lies. I'll show you my real life. We can live wherever you want. Have everything." "You think that's what I want?" She cut him off, incredulous. "Your money? Your mansions? Your luxury cars?" "No, You still don't get it." She shook her head, disappointed. "I'm leaving, Lucas." "No, please." He looked desperate now. "Give me a chance to fix this. I love you, Gabriella." "Love without trust means nothing." She walked into the bedroom, pulled a suitcase from under the bed, and began stuffing her clothes inside. "I hope one day you understand what really matters in life, but it'll be without me." Lucas followed her, begging, explaining, crying, but Gabriella had made up her mind. In less than an hour, her things were packed and she called a cab. "Where are you going?" Lucas asked, defeated, as she waited on the sidewalk. "Home. My real home." Her voice was calm now, the storm inside replaced by quiet resignation. "Don't come after me, Lucas. It's over." When the taxi arrived, Gabriella got in without looking back. As the car pulled away, she allowed herself one last moment of weakness. She looked through the rear window and saw Lucas standing on the sidewalk, the lonely figure of a man who had everything, yet had just lost what truly mattered. The trip home felt like the longest of Gabriella's life. Sitting on the bus with the crushed cake box on her lap, she tried to process what she had just seen. Lucas, her husband, wasn't just an office assistant trying to rebuild his life. He was, apparently, the owner of one of the largest tech companies in Chicago. When she got to the small apartment, Gabriella stood at the door for several minutes, unable to go in. Everything there now seemed like part of a carefully planned setup, a lie, a stage built just to deceive her. Finally, taking a deep breath, she turned the key in the lock and stepped inside. She looked around with new eyes, the worn-out couch, The coffee table with the broken leg, the faded curtains. Lucas, a wealthy man, had chosen to live in this place, with her. What? Her phone rang, startling her. It was Lucas. "Hi, Gabi. I have to work late tonight. Don't wait up for dinner, okay?" "All right," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Good luck with work." "Are you okay? Your voice sounds different." "I'm fine. Just tired. School was tough today." The lies came easily now, she realized with sadness. "Okay, I love you." Gabriella hung up without answering. Those words, "I love you," felt empty now. What could they mean, coming from someone living a complete lie? She spent the next few hours in a daze, sitting on the couch, going over every moment from the past few months. Lucas's supposed financial collapse, the rushed wedding, the move to Chicago, the modest apartment, the assistant job. All lies. Why would a rich and powerful man pretend to lose everything? Why would he marry her under false pretenses? Why live in this cramped apartment when he could be in a mansion? The answer hit her like a punch to the stomach. He was testing her. To see if she loved him for who he was, not for his money. And she, a hopeless romantic, had fallen into the trap like a mouse. Tears of anger and humiliation rolled down her face when she heard the key in the door. It was almost midnight, and Lucas was finally coming back from work. "Gabi?" he called as he entered, looking surprised to see her awake. "I thought you'd be asleep." She said nothing, just watched him. Lucas looked tired, his hair slightly messy, dark circles under his eyes, acting a part, as always. "What's wrong?" He walked closer, concerned. "Have you been crying?" "Who are you, Lucas?" The question came out as a whisper. "What do you mean? Who are you, really?" She stood up and faced him. "Because you're clearly not who you said you were." His face turned pale. "I don't know what you're talking about, Gabi. I'm exhausted. Can we talk tomorrow?" "I went downtown today," she went on, ignoring his attempt to escape. "Trying to sell my cakes to businesses, remember? That idea you thought might not work." Lucas swallowed hard, starting to understand. "Funny how I ended up at Summit Innovations, huge glass skyscraper, and guess who I saw there?" "Gabi, I can explain." "I saw you, Lucas," she shouted, all her bottled-up anger bursting out. "Wearing an expensive suit, giving orders, being called boss." Lucas closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the blow. "The show's over," she went on, shaking with anger. "I want the truth, now." He slowly walked over to the couch and sat down, running his hands over his face. "You're right," he finally began. "I didn't lose everything. In fact, I didn't lose anything. So it was all a lie? From the very beginning?" "Not everything," he argued, looking at her with pleading eyes. "My feelings for you are real, Gabi. They always have been." She laughed, bitterly. "Your feelings? How can I believe anything you say now?" "I own Summit Innovations," he continued, ignoring the question. "It's worth billions. I have apartments, houses, luxury cars, the whole life I pretended to have lost. Why?" The question was simple but full of pain. "Why do this to me?" Lucas stood up and began pacing the room, clearly agitated. "You don't understand, Gabi. Growing up with money, you're always surrounded by people who want what you have, not who you are. I've dated many women before, and every single one of them was more interested in my fortune than in me." He stopped and looked at her intensely. "Years ago, before I met you, I was engaged. Vanessa, beautiful, smart, from a good family." His voice trembled slightly. "I truly loved her and believed she felt the same." "What happened?" Gabriella asked, even though she didn't want to. "A week before the wedding, I went to visit her as a surprise. I heard her on the phone with her lover." The bitterness in his voice was clear. She was laughing, saying how easy it would be to marry me, take half my fortune in the divorce, and then run away with him. Gabriella sat back down, stunned by what she had just heard. "Since then, I never trusted anyone again. I built walls around myself, until I met you." A small, sad smile appeared on his face. "You were different from everyone else. Simple, genuine, hard-working, but the doubt was always there. So you decided to test me." "Yes," he admitted, lowering his head. "When we fell in love, I couldn't believe someone like you could truly love someone like me without caring about my money. I had to be sure. And you got your answer, didn't you?" She stood up, furious. "When I gave up everything to be with you, when my family welcomed you, when I proposed to you, believing we were two regular people starting over together." Tears were now running freely down Gabriella's face. "Yes, I got my answer," he whispered, also with tears in his eyes. "And it was more than I ever dreamed of. You showed me a kind of love I didn't know existed, Gabi. And in return, you lied to me about everything." "Not about loving you," he insisted, stepping closer to her. "Never about that." Gabriella stepped back as if his touch might burn her. "You don't know what love is, Lucas. Love is trust, it's honesty, it's respect." She wiped her tears with the back of her hands. "What you did wasn't love. It was manipulation." "Please, Gabi," he begged, trying to take her hands. "I can fix this. We can really start over now. No more lies. I'll show you my real life. We can live wherever you want, have everything." "Is that what you think I want?" she interrupted, incredulous. "Your money, your mansions, your luxury cars?" "No, You still don't get it." She shook her head, disappointed. "I'm leaving, Lucas." "No, please." He sounded desperate now. "Give me a chance to fix this. I love you, Gabriella." Love without trust means nothing. She walked to the bedroom, pulled a suitcase from under the bed, and started throwing her clothes into it. "I hope one day you'll understand what really matters in life, but it will be without me." Lucas followed her, pleading, reasoning, crying, but Gabriella had made up her mind. In less than an hour, she had her things packed and called a taxi. "Where are you going?" Lucas asked, defeated, as she waited on the sidewalk. "Home, my real home." Her voice was calm now, the storm inside her replaced by quiet resignation. "Don't come looking for me, Lucas. It's over." When the taxi arrived, Gabriella got in without looking back. As the car drove away, she allowed herself one last moment of weakness. She looked through the rear window and saw Lucas standing on the sidewalk, the lonely figure of a man who had everything, and at the same time had just lost what really mattered. The return to the farm was a journey filled with pain and reflection for Gabriella. During the long hours of travel, she went back and forth between silent tears and a deep anger that burned inside her. How could she have been so naive? How did she miss the signs? Even more painful was admitting that, despite everything, she still loved Lucas. The man she had met at the farm, who had worked side by side with her father, who had proposed to her with tears in his eyes, that man still lived in her heart, even if he was just a character played by a skilled actor. When she finally arrived at the farm, it was almost evening. The sight of the simple house where she grew up, with smoke coming out of the chimney and chickens pecking around the yard, brought a lump to her throat. This was her place, her truth. Miguel was in the barn when he heard the taxi approaching. He came out just in time to see his youngest daughter stepping out of the car, suitcase in hand and red eyes from crying. He didn't need any explanation. He just opened his arms, and Gabriella ran into them like she did when she was a little girl. "Daddy," she sobbed, holding on to him like a lifeline. "Shh, it's all right, my daughter," he whispered, gently stroking her hair. "You're home now." Anna and Clara were alerted by the commotion and soon joined the embrace. For a long moment, the family stayed like that, united, giving Gabriella the comfort that only true family love can offer. Later, sitting at the kitchen table with steaming cups of tea, Gabriella told them everything. The truth about Lucas's identity, the lie he had built, the cruel test he had put her through. As she spoke, she watched her family's expressions shift from surprise to anger and finally to sadness. Anna was so angry she couldn't find the right words. How could he do that? Play with your feelings, with our whole family? "It's sick," Clara agreed, holding her younger sister's hand. "A man with serious trust issues." Miguel stayed silent longer than the others, his wrinkled face more serious than ever. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with disappointment. "I sensed something was off about him from the beginning," he admitted. "The way he looked at our simple things like he was studying some exotic species. But I thought it was just the shock of losing everything." He slowly shook his head. "I never imagined such an elaborate lie, so cruel." "It's not your fault, Dad," Gabriella said, squeezing his rough hand. "He fooled all of us. So now what's always the practical one? What are you going to do?" Gabriella sighed, looking out the window at the farm she loved so much. "Start over, here, where I've always belonged." She tried to smile, though her eyes still looked sad. "I'll try to transfer back to the local college, keep baking, one day at a time." Clara and Anna nodded, showing their support. Miguel, however, still looked concerned. "And the marriage?" "Legally, you're still married. I'll take care of the divorce, Gabriella answered firmly. I don't want anything from him. I just want to forget Lucas Bennett ever existed. That night, lying in her old bed, Gabriella cried until there were no tears left. Not just for the love she had lost, but for the innocence she would never get back. Lucas had taken more than her heart. He had taken her ability to trust. In the days that followed, Gabriella tried to fall back into the rhythm of life on the farm. She woke up early, helped her father with chores, and baked cakes to sell at the local market. On the outside, she seemed to be handling things well, but inside, she felt empty. A week after she returned, she started feeling strangely unwell. Morning nausea, dizziness, extreme fatigue. At first, she blamed the emotional stress. But when the nausea didn't stop, Clara, with her nursing background, suggested a pregnancy test. That's impossible, Gabriella protested, though a chill ran down her spine. We were being careful. No method is 100% foolproof, Clara gently reminded her, and you were trying to build a life together. Maybe without realizing it. Reluctantly, Gabriella agreed to take the test. The wait for the result felt like the longest minutes of her life. When the 2 pink lines appeared in the little window, her world turned upside down again. Pregnant, she was carrying Lucas's child. The news hit the family like a bolt of lightning from a clear sky. Anna worried about the financial implications. Clara, always emotional, cried with joy despite the circumstances. Miguel, after the initial shock, took a practical stance. He needs to know, he said firmly. He's the father of that child. No, Gabriella said with conviction. Lucas lied about everything, Dad. Everything. I don't want my child growing up around someone like that. But my mind is made up, she cut in, with a determination that surprised them all. I'm going to raise this baby on my own. We have a family here. That's all we need. Miguel didn't argue further, respecting his daughter's choice, though his face showed he didn't fully agree. 2 weeks later, during a routine checkup, Gabriella received another surprise that left her breathless. Congratulations, Mrs. Oliveira, the doctor said with a smile, pointing to the ultrasound screen. You're having twins. Twins. 2 babies. It would have been wonderful news under different circumstances if she were married to a man who truly loved her, if she weren't starting from scratch, if her life weren't in total disarray. That same day, the doctor expressed concern about Gabriella's high blood pressure. You need to avoid stress, she warned seriously. Twin pregnancies are already higher risk, and with your blood pressure, I'm classifying this as high risk. Another complication. Gabriella nodded, promising to take care of herself, though inside she was panicking. How could she stay calm when her life felt like a hurricane? To make things worse, a severe drought hit the region that summer. The farm's crops began to wither under the relentless sun, threatening the family's main source of income. Miguel spent entire days trying to save what he could, rationing the little water they had. We'll get through this. Anna tried to stay optimistic during dinner, though the deep circles under her eyes revealed her worries. We always do. Gabriella looked at her family, her aging father working beyond his limits, her sisters exhausted from juggling jobs and helping on the farm, and felt a heavy weight in her chest. Now, they had 2 more mouths to feed, and the financial situation was getting worse. On a particularly hot evening, while helping her father check the improvised irrigation system, Gabriella felt a strong wave of dizziness and had to lean on his shoulder to keep from falling. You need to rest, Miguel said firmly. Think about the babies. I'm fine, Dad, just a little lightheaded from the heat. The look Miguel gave her was full of concern, and something more, a quiet understanding that things couldn't go on like this. Sweetheart, he began carefully. I know you don't want to hear this, but Lucas has a right to know about the babies, and financially. No, she cut him off sharply. I'm not going to use my children as an excuse to ask him for money. It's not asking, Miguel said gently. It's their right, and with how things are here, we'll manage, she insisted. We always have. But that night, alone in her room, Gabriella allowed herself to face the truth. Things were critical. The farm barely produced enough to support the family, let alone raise 2 more children. Her savings were minimal. Medical expenses were already piling up. Would it be wrong to accept financial help from Lucas for the babies? Was her pride worth more than her children's well-being? The answer was clear, but still painful to admit. The next morning, reluctantly, she picked up the phone to call Lucas. Her finger hovered over the dial button, but she couldn't bring herself to press it. "Not yet," she whispered to herself, setting the phone down. "I need to try a little longer on my own." What Gabriella didn't know was that, hundreds of miles away in Chicago, Lucas had already begun searching for her, determined to fix the damage he had caused, no matter the cost. Lucas spent the first few days after Gabriella left in a state of denial and self-pity. He stayed in the small apartment, refusing to return to his luxurious penthouse, as if staying there could somehow keep Gabriella close. He ignored calls from Marcos and his team at Summit, drowning himself in alcohol and regret. On the fourth day, after a particularly rough night, Gabriella's alarm, which she had forgotten to take, went off at 5 a.m. That familiar sound, once the beginning of another day with the woman he loved, now echoed through the empty apartment like a ghostly reminder. Lucas sat up in bed, staring at the little clock as if it held all the answers in the world. Gabriella's morning routine came back to him, how she always woke before him, made fresh coffee, hummed softly while setting the table. Small moments of real happiness he had thrown away because of his fear. "What have I done?" he murmured to the empty room. At that moment, something shifted inside him. The self-pity gave way to determination. He had made the biggest mistake of his life, but he wasn't going to give up. He would fight for Gabriella. He would prove himself worthy of her. The first step was to find out where she was, though he strongly suspected she had returned to her family's farm. He even considered hiring private investigators, but dismissed the idea immediately. He had already broken Gabriella's trust through lies and manipulation. He wasn't going to make the same mistake again. Instead, he called the Oliveira family farm directly. The phone rang several times before Anna answered, her voice turning cold when she recognized him. "What do you want, Lucas? Or should I say Mr. Bennett, the big businessman?" He swallowed his pride, taking the sarcasm he deserved. "Anna, please, I need to speak with Gabriella. She doesn't want to talk to you." "I understand, but—" "No, you don't understand," Anna snapped, her voice shaking with anger. "You broke my sister. She came back here a shell of who she was. You played with her feelings, with our whole family. It was cruel and unforgivable." Her words hit Lucas like blows, each one more painful than the last. "You're right," he admitted, his voice quiet. "I was selfish and cruel. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I have to try to make things right. Some things can't be fixed, Lucas. Please, Anna, just tell me how she is." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Anna sighed. "She's coping. That's all you need to know." Before Lucas could say another word, Anna hung up. In the days that followed, Lucas sent daily letters to Gabriella. Not emails or text messages, handwritten letters, where he poured out his heart, page after page. He confessed his fears, his insecurities, the emptiness he felt without her. He spoke about the transformation happening inside him, how his eyes had been opened to what really mattered in life. He never got a response. Meanwhile, he returned to work at Summit, throwing himself into saving the company from a hostile takeover with renewed intensity. No longer for power or money, but for the thousands of employees whose jobs depended on him. That, he realized, was responsibility. Something Gabriella and her family had taught him. "You seem different," Marcos said during a meeting, watching him with curiosity. "More grounded. What happened during those weeks you were gone?" Lucas gave a sad smile. "I learned what truly matters, and what it costs to lose it." The fight against Jeffrey Winters was still fierce, but Lucas was gaining ground. His new product line had been a huge success, boosting the company's stock and making the takeover much harder. But no matter how much he focused on work, his thoughts always returned to Gabriella. One day, almost 2 months after she left, Lucas got a call that changed everything. It was a medical clinic in a small town near the Oliveira's farm. "Mr. Bennett, this is Dr. Ramirez. I'm calling about your wife, Gabriella Oliveira." Lucas's heart skipped a beat. Did something happen to her? "She fainted during an appointment today, and we needed to reach her emergency contact. She's stable now, but considering her condition—" "What condition?" Lucas interrupted, panic rising in his voice. There was a pause on the other end. "The pregnancy, sir. I assumed you knew." Lucas felt the world stop. Pregnancy? Gabriella is pregnant? Oh dear. The doctor sounded genuinely concerned. "Mr. Bennett, your wife is pregnant with twins. It's a high-risk pregnancy because of hypertension. I thought she had told her father." Lucas barely managed to thank her and hang up before collapsing into his chair. Gabriella was expecting not one but two babies, his babies, and she had never planned to tell him. Within an hour, Lucas was on his way to the Oliveira's farm. This time, there would be no letters or phone calls. He needed to see Gabriella in person, to be by her side and with the babies on the way. Nothing else mattered. When he arrived at the farm, the first thing he noticed was the poor state of the crops. The drought had clearly taken a toll, wilted plants and dry, cracked soil everywhere. Things looked serious. He parked his car, a much more modest model than his usual Range Rover, at a distance and walked to the house, his heart pounding. Before he could even reach the porch, Miguel appeared at the door, arms crossed and a stern expression. "I knew you'd come eventually," the older man said, with no trace of welcome in his voice. "Miguel, please," Lucas pleaded. "I need to see her. I just found out about the babies." "She doesn't want to see you. I understand, but no, you don't understand." Miguel cut him off, stepping down the stairs to face him. "My daughter trusted you. I trusted you. You came into our lives, accepted our hospitality, married Gabriella, all based on lies." Lucas lowered his head, unable to deny the truth. "I'm not proud of what I did," he admitted. "It was wrong, unforgivable even. But now there are two children involved. My children. Please, Miguel, just let me see her." The older man's eyes searched Lucas's face carefully. "She's resting now. The doctor ordered complete bed rest after today's fainting. Come back tomorrow." It wasn't a definite no, and Lucas held on to that sliver of hope. "I'll be here at sunrise," he promised. When Lucas returned the next day, it was Clara who greeted him, just as cold as her father and older sister. "Gabriella doesn't want to see you," she said. "She told me if you truly love her, you'll respect her decision." Lucas felt the blow, but didn't give up. He came back the next day, and the next, and the one after that. Every day, a different family member met him with the same message. Gabriella didn't want to see him. On the fifth day, when he arrived at the farm, he found Anna alone, carrying buckets of water for the plants. "She still doesn't want to see me?" he asked, already expecting the usual answer. Anna set the buckets down, wiping sweat from her forehead with her arm. "What do you think? You broke her heart into 1,000 pieces." "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to fix that if she lets me." He looked around at the dry fields. "The drought's getting worse, isn't it?" "Observant, aren't you?" she replied with sarcasm. "We've already lost half the crops. If it doesn't rain in the next few days, we'll lose everything." Lucas hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I can help, Anna. I have resources. I can bring in irrigation systems, hire some extra hands." "We don't want your money," she cut in, pride clear in her voice. "We've been through this before. We'll get through it again. It's not about the money. It's about the babies, my children." Lucas looked straight into her eyes. "And Gabriella, because I love her more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone." Something in his eyes must have struck a chord with Anna, because her expression softened just a bit. "Look, I don't agree with what you did. It was cruel and manipulative. But," she sighed, seeming torn, "I also see how you've been coming here every day, how you send those letters Gabriella pretends not to read but keeps in her dresser drawer." A small flicker of hope lit up in Lucas's chest. "She keeps my letters? Don't change the subject." Anna picked up the buckets again. "If you really want to help, respect her space. Give it time." Lucas nodded, taking the advice to heart. Still, he couldn't just walk away. Not when Gabriella was carrying his children in a high-risk pregnancy. Not when her family was struggling financially because of the drought. That's when he had an idea. If he couldn't help directly, he would do it indirectly, in a way that wouldn't hurt their pride or pressure Gabriella. That very night, a violent storm hit the area. Strong winds, lightning, hail, a perfect recipe for destruction. At dawn, the Oliveira family stepped outside to find part of the house's roof torn off, one of the barn walls collapsed, and several pieces of farming equipment damaged. "This is the end," Miguel muttered, looking devastated at the damage. "There's no way we can afford to fix all this." Just then, a truck appeared on the dirt road, followed by two more. The first one stopped in front of the house, and a middle-aged woman got out, wearing a t-shirt with the logo of a humanitarian organization. "Oliveira family?" she asked, checking a clipboard. "We're from Helping Hands. We got word about the damage from last night's storm and came to help with the rebuilding." Miguel frowned, confused. "We didn't call anyone, and we can't afford to pay for repairs." The woman smiled kindly. "No need to worry, sir. We're a non-profit. All materials and labor are donations from local businesses that care about small farmers affected by natural disasters." As she spoke, the other trucks began unloading wood, roofing materials, tools, and even a small generator. A team of about 20 people, all wearing the same NGO t-shirts, jumped down and started organizing for the job. "This seems a little too convenient," Anna commented, suspicious. The woman just smiled. "Sometimes luck turns around, doesn't it? Now, if you can show us the main damage, we'll know where to start." The family, though hesitant at first, wasn't really in a position to turn down help. Slowly, they set aside their doubts and began working with the NGO crew, repairing the damage and even making improvements they never would have been able to do on their own. What the Oliveira family didn't know was that Helping Hands had been created exactly 48 hours earlier, fully funded by Lucas Bennett, with the sole purpose of helping that one farm, without revealing his involvement. As the rebuilding went on, Gabriella remained on strict bed rest, following the doctor's orders. Through the window, she watched the activity in the yard, her heart torn between gratitude for the unexpected help and suspicion that something more was going on. That same afternoon, she received a call from the clinic. Her test results showed her blood pressure was still dangerously high, and the doctor recommended immediate hospitalization for constant monitoring. "I can't go to the hospital," Gabriella protested over the phone. "My family needs me here, and we can't afford a long hospital stay." "Mrs. Oliveira, we're not just talking about your health, but your baby's lives," the doctor said firmly. "Preeclampsia is a serious condition that can lead to fatal complications. You need to come in today." Reluctantly, Gabriella agreed. Clara drove her to the hospital that same afternoon, promising to visit her every day. What Gabriella didn't know was that, upon arrival, she'd find a private suite waiting for her, with the best high-risk pregnancy specialists already assigned to her case. All of it quietly arranged by Lucas. On the third day of her hospital stay, when her condition finally began to stabilize, Gabriella woke up in the middle of the night with the strange feeling that someone was in the room. She slowly opened her eyes and saw a figure sitting in the armchair next to her bed, holding her hand. It was Lucas. He hadn't noticed she was awake. His head was lowered, eyes closed as if he were praying. Silent tears ran down his face as he gently caressed her hand. "Please be okay," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You and our babies. It's okay if you never forgive me. I just want you to be all right. I love you so much, Gabi. So much it hurts." Gabriella quickly closed her eyes again, pretending to still be asleep. Her heart raced, torn between the anger from his betrayal and the deep emotion of seeing the man she still loved so vulnerable, so truly remorseful. Later, when the nurse came in to check her vitals, she casually asked if anyone had visited during the night. "Oh yes, your husband," the nurse replied casually. "He's been coming every night since you were admitted. Always after visiting hours, when everyone else is gone. He stays here holding your hand until morning, then leaves before you wake up." "Every night?" Gabriella repeated, surprised. "Yes, poor guy looks exhausted. I found him sleeping in that uncomfortable chair yesterday. I offered him some coffee, but he said no, didn't want to wake you with the smell." That night, Gabriella decided not to pretend to sleep when Lucas arrived. She waited patiently, and when he quietly entered the room around midnight, she greeted him with a simple, "Hi." Lucas froze at the door, clearly caught off guard. "Gabi, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. I'll go." "No," she said, surprising herself. "Stay." Hesitant, he stepped closer to the bed, keeping a respectful distance. "How are you feeling?" "Better. My blood pressure is under control." She studied him for a moment. "You look tired." "I'm fine," he replied quickly, though the deep circles under his eyes told a different story. An awkward silence fell between them. There was so much to say, so many open wounds, neither knew where to start. "The letters," Gabriella said finally. "I read them all." "Really?" Lucas's eyes lit up with hope. That doesn't mean I forgive you, she quickly clarified. What you did, it hurt me deeply, Lucas. You played with my feelings, with my whole family. I know, he lowered his head, and I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it. Why have you been coming here every night? Because I can't stay away, he admitted, voice unsteady. Even knowing I don't deserve your forgiveness, even if we never get back what we had, I just need to know you and our babies are okay. Gabriella rested her hand over her slightly rounded belly. So you already know about the twins? Yes, the doctor called me when you passed out. He paused. Gabi, I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but please, let me be part of their lives. I want to be a present father. I want to help in every way I can. And what about the mysterious nonprofit that showed up at the farm? Or this private hospital room that clearly costs more than my family could ever afford? Lucas looked ashamed. I couldn't just stand by and watch you and your family struggle. I knew your pride wouldn't let you accept help directly. So you created a fake nonprofit and bribed the hospital, she said, shaking her head. Always the powerful man, trying to control everything and everyone. That's not how it was, he protested. I just wanted to help without pushing my way in, without making things harder for you. I wanted to respect your space. Gabriella sighed, conflict clear on her face. On one hand, the pain of his betrayal was still fresh. On the other, it was impossible to ignore all the effort Lucas was making, the real remorse in his eyes, and the love he still clearly felt. I need time, Lucas, she finally said. Time to think, to heal, to decide what I want for me and for our children. I understand, he nodded, disappointment obvious in his voice. I'll respect that. But please know, I'll be here, Gabi, waiting, for as long as it takes. He stood to leave but stopped at the door, turning back one last time. And please don't turn down the help at the farm or here at the hospital. It's not for me. It's for the babies, for our children. With those words he left, leaving Gabriella alone with her swirling thoughts, and a heart that, despite itself, was slowly beginning to open to the possibility of forgiveness. What she didn't know was that as she was leaving the hospital that night, Lucas ran into Miguel in the lobby. That unexpected meeting led to a conversation that would change the course of their lives forever. Let's play a little game with the folks who only read the comments. Type Coca-Cola in the comments. Only those who got this far will understand. Now let's get back to the story. Lucas hadn't expected to find Miguel at the hospital so late at night, much less have a meaningful conversation with him. But there they were, sitting in a quiet corner of the empty cafeteria, untouched cups of coffee in front of them. Have you been sleeping here? Miguel asked, noticing Lucas's wrinkled clothes and unshaven face. In the waiting room, Lucas replied. I want to be nearby in case something happens. Miguel studied his son-in-law for a long moment. Tired eyes, slumped shoulders, not the image of the powerful CEO he'd read about in the papers after learning Lucas's true identity. What he saw was a broken man, genuinely worried. 3 nights sleeping in hospital chairs, Miguel said, shaking his head slowly. Why don't you go to a hotel? I know you can afford the best one in town. Lucas rubbed his tired face. I can't stay away, and I don't deserve comfort when Gabriella is suffering because of me. Miguel took a sip of his coffee, thoughtful. You know, when I found out what you did, I wanted to strangle you with my own hands. I would have let you, Lucas replied with a small, sad smile. What you did was unforgivable, Miguel continued, his tone firm. Lying, manipulating, playing with my daughter's feelings. I know, Lucas said, bowing his head, accepting the well-earned scolding. But, Miguel paused, his hardened expression softening just a little. Seeing you here night after night, sending that fake NGO to help with the farm without looking for recognition, paying for Gabriella's best medical care without her knowing. I'm starting to think maybe there's more to you than I thought. Lucas looked at the older man, surprised by the small opening he was being given. I'm not the man I pretended to be when we met, Lucas admitted, but I'm also not the same man who planned that cruel scheme. Gabriella and your family changed me, Miguel. They showed me values I never learned growing up in the business world. Miguel nodded slowly, as if processing his words. What do you want now, Lucas? Really? I want a second chance, he answered without hesitation. I want to show Gabriella I can be the man she deserves. I want to be the father of our children, a good father, and I want to be part of your family, if you'll let me." "Words are easy," Miguel said, though not as harshly as before. "Then let me prove it with actions." Lucas leaned forward, sincere. "I have a proposal, not for Gabriela, but for you." Miguel raised his eyebrows, curious. "What proposal?" "Let me live and work on the farm for a month. Not as the rich son-in-law, not as the CEO, but as a regular worker. No privileges, no money. Just my hands and a willingness to learn. If after that you still think I haven't changed, that I don't deserve a second chance with your daughter, I'll walk away forever." Miguel looked genuinely surprised by the offer. "You'd leave your company for a month to work on a farm? I can manage the most urgent matters remotely, a few hours a week. The rest of the time I'll just be another pair of hands helping out after the storm." The older man considered the proposal for a few minutes, eyes locked on Lucas, gauging his sincerity. "And Gabriela? Would she agree to this?" "I don't know," Lucas admitted. "Probably not at first. But I'm not asking to come back as her husband. I just want the chance to show I've changed, that I've learned from my mistakes." Miguel finished his coffee, deep in thought. When he finally spoke, his voice was firm but not hostile. "1 month, then. Hard work, no special treatment, and you follow my rules." A week later, Gabriela was discharged from the hospital. Her condition had stabilized enough to continue treatment at home, as long as she rested and attended her follow-up appointments. Clara came to pick her up, chatting excitedly about all the improvements on the farm, thanks to the mysterious NGO. They fixed the roof, rebuilt part of the barn, even installed a more efficient irrigation system, Clara explained, helping Gabriela into the car. "And they brought drought-resistant seeds so we can replant what we lost." Gabriela simply nodded, fully aware of where all that generosity had come from. During her time in the hospital, she'd had plenty of time to think about Lucas, about his lies, but also about his regrets and attempts to make things right. Part of her still loved him. That was undeniable. But could love really work without trust? As the car approached the farm, Gabriela immediately noticed the improvements. The house had fresh paint, the rebuilt barn looked sturdier than before, and the fields, though still recovering from the drought, now had a modern irrigation system in place. "It looks like a different place," she said as Clara helped her out of the car. "Wait until you see the inside of the house. They reinforced the floor, fixed all the leaks, even installed a solar water heating system." Anna came out to greet them, hugging Gabriela carefully because of the growing belly. "Welcome back, little sister. We missed you." "Where's Dad?" Gabriela asked, noticing the absence of their father. The sisters exchanged quick glances, and an odd silence settled between them. "What is it? Did something happen to him?" No, Anna quickly reassured her. "He's fine. He's out in the north field, checking the new crops." "With the new helper," Clara added, earning a disapproving look from Anna. "What new helper?" Gabriela asked, already suspicious. Before the sisters could answer, the front door opened and Miguel came in, smiling as he saw his youngest daughter. "My girl, finally home." He gave her a warm hug, but Gabriela noticed something different about his behavior, a certain nervousness that wasn't like him. "What's going on, Dad?" Clara mentioned a new helper. Miguel cleared his throat, clearly uneasy. "Well, with you in the hospital and so much work to do after the storm, we needed an extra hand." Just then the door opened again, and Lucas walked in carrying a toolbox. He was almost unrecognizable, tanned, his clothes covered in dirt, hair messy, and hands rough from hard labor. He looked genuinely surprised to see Gabriela, as if he didn't know she was coming home that day. "Gabby," he murmured, frozen in the doorway. "What is he doing here?" Gabriela turned to her father, her voice shaking with emotion, anger, confusion, and something else she didn't want to admit. "He showed up a week ago, asked to work here," Miguel explained calmly. "Said he wanted to prove he's changed." "And you let him?" Gabriela couldn't believe it. "After everything he did?" "Everyone deserves a second chance, sweetheart," Miguel replied gently. "And so far, he's been working harder than any of us. No complaints, no special treatment. He sleeps in the barn, gets up before sunrise, goes to bed after we all do." Gabriela looked at Lucas, who remained quiet, respecting her shock and outrage. Her eyes picked up on things she hadn't noticed before, the calloused hands, even rougher than when he used to fake working on the farm, the sunburned face, the dark circles under his eyes from exhaustion. "Is this just another act?" she asked him directly, her voice full of doubt. "No," Lucas replied simply. "I'm here because I want to be, to learn, to help, to prove, not with words but with actions, that I've changed, that I can be better." Gabriella felt tears begin to form but held them back. "You lied about everything before. How can I believe you now?" "I'm not asking you to believe me right away," he said gently. "I'm just asking for the chance to show you, day by day, that I'm worthy of your trust again." Anna, who had been watching the exchange carefully, stepped in. "Gabi, I know it's hard for you to see him here. I didn't like it at first either. None of us did. But—" she paused, choosing her words. "He really has been working hard, and he is the father of your babies." "You're taking his side now?" Gabriella asked, stunned. "I'm on your side," Anna corrected. "Always, and maybe, just maybe, giving Lucas a chance to prove himself is what's best for you too, for all of us." Gabriella felt cornered, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to kick Lucas out of her life for good. Another part, a part that grew stronger each day, especially since learning she was pregnant, wanted to forgive him, to believe he really could change. "I need to rest," she finally said, her voice tired. "The doctor said I need to stay off my feet." "Of course," Miguel quickly agreed. "Lucas, finish fixing that fence and then check the irrigation system in the east field." "Yes, sir," Lucas replied, like any obedient employee. Before leaving, he looked at Gabriella one last time, his eyes saying everything his words couldn't: regret, hope, love. "I'm glad you're home, Gabby. I hope you get better soon." After he left, Gabriella went to her room, which had been carefully prepared for her return. Fresh sheets, flowers on the nightstand, even a comfortable armchair placed by the window, perfect for the days of rest ahead. In the days that followed, Gabriella kept her distance from Lucas, watching him only from afar, through her bedroom window. She saw him working non-stop from sunrise to sunset, handling the toughest tasks without complaint, speaking respectfully with her father, and even laughing now and then with her sisters. Slowly, almost against her will, she began to notice subtle changes in him. It wasn't just his physical appearance, though the sun and hard work had clearly left their mark. There was something deeper, a real sense of humility, a gratitude for the simple things he once took for granted. One week after she returned home, while having breakfast in the kitchen, Gabriella overheard a conversation between Lucas and her father in the yard, near the open window. "Why are you really doing this, Lucas?" Miguel's voice was serious, questioning. "You could just use your money and influence to try and win Gabriella back, or move on, find someone else. But instead, you came here, working like a farmhand, sleeping on the barn floor." There was a pause before Lucas answered. "When I met Gabriella and your family, I was lost, Miguel. I had money, power, success in business, but I was empty inside, empty and cynical." Another pause, as if he was choosing his words carefully. "The time I spent here during my deception was the happiest I've ever been. Not because of luxuries, obviously, but because for the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere, to someone. Your family showed me what unconditional love is, what honest work and integrity mean. When Gabriella left me, I realized I'd thrown away the only truly valuable thing I ever had. And I saw that all my money meant nothing if I couldn't be the kind of man who deserves a woman like her." His sincerity was clear, even from a distance. Gabriella felt silent tears run down her face as she continued to listen. "I'm here because I want to earn the right to be part of this family again," Lucas went on. "Not because of what I can offer financially or through connections, but because of the man I believe I can become. The man you all helped me see in myself." That night, Gabriella couldn't sleep. Lucas's words echoed in her mind, along with memories of the happy moments they had shared, both during the deception and in the early days back in Chicago. Despite everything, he was right about one thing. Those moments had been real, and so had the love between them. The next morning, she woke up with a sense of resolve. She got dressed with care and went out to the yard, where she knew Lucas would be starting his daily chores. He was fixing one of the fences, so focused he didn't notice her approach. Gabriella watched him for a moment, his muscles shaped by hard work, his hands calloused, his face tanned from the sun. This man, who once ran a billion-dollar company from a luxury penthouse, now worked the land with the same dedication as her father. "We need to talk," she finally said, making her presence known. Lucas turned around, clearly surprised and nervous. "Gabby, good morning. Of course we can talk." She motioned toward a bench under a nearby tree, and they walked there in silence. They sat side by side, leaving a respectful space between them. "Why are you really here, Lucas?" she asked, getting straight to the point. "And don't give me the thoughtful answer you gave my father. I want the simple truth." Lucas took a deep breath, looking at her with intensity. "I'm here because I love you. Because I love our children, even though they haven't been born yet. And because I want to be worthy of that love." Gabriella nodded slowly, as if the answer confirmed something she had already suspected. "You know this won't be easy. I trusted you once with all my heart, and you broke that trust in a calculated way." "I know," he said, not trying to defend himself, "and I understand that I might never fully earn your trust back, but I'm willing to try, for as long as it takes." She looked down at her growing belly, feeling the first gentle movements of the babies. "I'm not doing this just for me anymore. I have to think about them too." "Of course," Lucas nodded, following her gaze. "They deserve to have both parents in their lives if possible. But I understand if you decide I can't be part of your life, Gabby. If that's the case, I'll respect your decision, though I'll never stop trying to be the best father I can be for our children." Gabriella remained silent for a long moment, weighing all the possibilities, all the conflicting feelings in her heart. At last she made a decision. "One step at a time," she said softly. "I can't promise we'll go back to what we were. I can't even promise that I'll ever fully forgive you. But, Lucas asked, hope clearly visible in his eyes. "But I'm willing to try. For me, for our children, and maybe for us." The smile that lit up Lucas's face was sincere, full of gratitude and relief. He hesitantly reached out his hand to her, and after a moment of hesitation, Gabriella accepted it, letting their fingers gently intertwine. "That's all I ask," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "A chance to prove every day that the man you met on the farm, the one who worked the land, who loved his family, who married you believing he had nothing, that man is real. He always was." Gabriella felt something break and come together again inside her. Not the old, naive trust she once had, but something new, something stronger, forged through pain and forgiveness. A new beginning. "Then prove it," she gently challenged, squeezing his hand lightly. "Day by day." And that's exactly what Lucas began to do. The weeks that followed were a time of rebuilding, not just the farm damaged by the storm, but also the fragile relationship between Lucas and Gabriella. Step by step, day by day, they walked the difficult path of forgiveness and rebuilding trust. Lucas stayed in the barn, respecting the space Gabriella needed. He continued working hard on the farm, not just to prove his worth, but because he had truly come to let life. The honest work under the sun, the satisfaction of watching crops grow through his effort, the simple meals shared with family after a long day. Gabriella, in turn, watched his transformation with a mix of caution and hope. Little by little, she allowed small moments of closeness, a conversation over dinner, a walk around the farm, and eventually she even let Lucas feel the babies kicking when he placed his hand on her growing belly. "They're strong," Lucas said, moved by the feeling, tears in his eyes. Just like their mother. It was during this time of cautious reconnection that Gabriella finally asked about Summit Innovations. "How's your company? Shouldn't you be there?" "I named Marcos as acting CEO," Lucas explained. "He handles the day-to-day while I stay in touch for the big decisions. The hostile takeover attempt was blocked." "You gave all that up to stay here?" "I didn't give it up. I just changed my priorities," he replied honestly. "The Lucas you met here on the farm discovered values the CEO of Summit never understood." That conversation marked a turning point. Gabriella began to realize that the change in Lucas wasn't an act, but a genuine transformation. One particularly hot afternoon, while resting on the porch as ordered by her doctor, Gabriella felt a sharp pain in her belly. She tried to ignore it, but as it grew worse, fear took over. "Lucas!" she cried out, frightened. He dropped his tools in the field and ran to her immediately. Seeing her pale and in pain, he didn't hesitate for a second. "We're going to the hospital. Now." On the way, Gabriella had light bleeding. Lucas drove as fast as he could, one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers. "It's going to be okay," he repeated, though his face showed pure fear. "Our babies are strong, just like you." At the emergency room, Gabriella was taken for tests right away. Lucas stayed in the waiting room, devastated by the thought of losing his children before even meeting them. Hours later, the doctor came with news. "Fortunately, we've stabilized the situation, but Mrs. Oliveira will need to stay in the hospital under constant monitoring until the end of the pregnancy. The next 2 months are critical." Lucas nodded, taking in the information. "Can I see her?" Gabriella was lying in bed, connected to monitors tracking her and the baby's heartbeats. She looked small and vulnerable in the hospital bed. "The babies are fine," she said when she saw him, tears of relief running down her face. "But I have to stay here until the delivery." Lucas sat beside her, holding her hand. "I'll be with you every second." "You can't. You have the farm, the company. Nothing else matters now," he said firmly. "My place is here." And he kept that promise. Over the next 2 months, Lucas practically lived at the hospital. He slept in the chair beside Gabriella's bed, only leaving for quick showers and to handle urgent business calls. He brought photos of the farm to brighten the room and read aloud to her and the babies. Miguel and the sisters took turns visiting, bringing homemade meals and news from the farm. On one of those visits, Miguel found Lucas asleep in the chair, clearly exhausted after 3 days without leaving. "Never thought I'd say this," the old farmer said when Lucas woke up, "but you really do love her." "More than my own life," Lucas replied, his voice hoarse from tiredness. "I think you've proven your worth, son." Those words meant more to Lucas than any $1 million contract he'd ever signed. The final stage of Gabriella's pregnancy was delicate, and she had to stay in the hospital. Lucas turned the cold, clinical room into a cozy space, bringing personal items, photos, and even plants to make it more bearable. One night, while they were watching a movie on the small hospital TV, Gabriella asked a question she had been avoiding for months. "What if we went back to Chicago after the babies are born?" Lucas turned to her, surprised. "You'd consider that?" "I've been thinking a lot," she said, gently rubbing her large belly. "The farm will always be my home, but you have a business to run, and maybe it's time to bring our 2 worlds together instead of choosing one over the other." Lucas felt overwhelmed with emotion. "Are you really giving me a second chance?" "I'm giving us a second chance," she said softly, "but on one condition." "Anything." "Total honesty, always. No more lies, not even the ones meant to protect me." "I promise," Lucas said with conviction, taking her hands. "Complete transparency for the rest of our lives." At that moment, Gabriella's face twisted in pain. "Lucas, I think it's time." 26 hours later, Miguel and Clara Bennett were born, healthy despite the complications during pregnancy. When the nurse placed the twins in his arms for the first time, Lucas cried openly, overwhelmed by the miracle they had created. "They're perfect," he whispered, looking at their tiny faces, each one a mix of his and Gabriella's features. "Just like you." The whole family came to meet the new arrivals. Miguel, moved by the grandchildren who carried his and his late wife's names, and Ana and Clara, thrilled with their new niece and nephew. In the weeks that followed, Lucas proved to be a devoted father, changing diapers, preparing bottles, comforting them during sleepless nights. The man who once barely took care of himself now showed endless patience with the twins. When it was time to leave the hospital, the question of where to go was important. After many conversations, they reached a compromise. They would spend a few months at the farm so Gabriella could fully recover, and the babies could grow up close to nature and family. Later, they would split their time between Chicago and the farm. But Lucas had a surprise planned. When they arrived at the farm, Gabriella noticed a new building near the main road. "What's that?" Lucas smiled, not giving anything away. "Just an idea I had. Want to take a look?" As they got closer, Gabriella saw a beautiful rustic building with an elegant sign at the entrance, "Gabi's Sweets, Artisan Bakery." "What is this?" she asked, emotional. "Your dream," Lucas replied. "A bakery of your own, right next to the farm. Fully equipped for you to create your culinary wonders." Gabriella stepped inside, amazed by the mix of modern equipment and rustic charm. Industrial ovens, marble counters, elegant display cases, even a small cafe area for customers. "When?" I started the project while you were in the hospital, he explained. Your father and sisters helped oversee everything. The idea is to build a business that highlights the farm's products and your talent as a chef. I thought we could run it together. Maybe. Together? Gabriella looked surprised. What about Summit? Lucas took a deep breath. I made a decision while you were in the hospital. I'm stepping down as CEO permanently. Marcos will do a better job than I ever could. You'd give up everything you built? Why? Because I found something more valuable, he answered simply. I almost lost you and our children because of my pride and obsession with power. I'm not going to make that mistake again. In that moment, Gabriella knew this was the real Lucas, not the arrogant billionaire, not the remorseful pretender, but a man who had finally understood the true meaning of success and happiness. Welcome to our new life, she said with a smile, pulling him into a kiss that sealed not just their reconciliation, but a brand new beginning. 1 year later, Gabby's Sweets had become a regional sensation. People drove for hours just to try Gabriella's famous cakes, now improved with techniques she had learned in the culinary school she had finally finished. Lucas had discovered a surprising talent for small business, using his corporate experience in a more personal, thoughtful way. Together, they created a model that not only made a profit, but also supported local products and gave jobs to people in the community. The twins, now 1 year old, were growing up strong and healthy, surrounded by a loving extended family. They split their time between the simple, cozy home they had built near the farm and occasional visits to Chicago, where Lucas still kept an eye on Summit from afar. Under Marcos's leadership, the company had become even more ethical and sustainable. On a sunny Sunday morning, friends and family gathered at the bakery, decorated with flowers and ribbons. It was the day of Lucas and Gabriella's vow renewal, a celebration not of the rushed wedding built on lies, but of the true love they had built through hard times. Miguel walked Gabriella down the aisle, set up between the tables. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Lucas stood at the front, holding the twins in his arms, his face glowing with happiness. When the time came for the vows, Lucas handed the babies to Anna and Clara and took Gabriella's hands. A year ago, I was a lost man, looking in all the wrong places for what I thought was happiness, he began. I tried to test you, but in the end, I was the one who was tested. I promise that every day we live together will be based on complete honesty. I will never hide who I truly am again, the man you helped me discover. Gabriella smiled through tears. A year ago, I thought I had lost everything when I found out about your lie. But today I know that was just the beginning of our real story. I promise to keep believing in the best of you, just like you now believe in the best of yourself. After exchanging rings, Gabriella made one last announcement that no one expected. And to complete our happiness, it looks like Miguel and Clara are going to have a little brother or sister soon. The news was met with cheers and emotional hugs. With tears in his eyes, Lucas held Gabriella and the twins close, feeling finally complete. What did you think of Lucas and Gabriella's story? Let us know in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all of our stories. And be sure to check out more emotional stories by clicking here on the final screen.